Hi, this is Eric Smith. I thought I would do a quick look on a bunch of Old Testament verses that talks about a really important subject, and that's false prophets. This is Deuteronomy chapter 18, verses 20 through 22, and the Word of God reads this way. But the prophet which shall presume to speak a word in my name, which I have not commanded him to speak, or that shall speak in the name of other gods, even that prophet shall die. And if thou say in thine heart, how shall we know the word which the Lord hath not spoken? When a prophet speaketh in the name of the Lord, if the thing follow not, nor come to pass, that is the thing which the Lord hath not spoken. But the prophet hath spoken it presumptuously. Thou shalt not be afraid of him. In these verses, it's talking about false prophets. And I want to point out three things in these three verses. The what, the how, and the when. In verse 20, it talks about what describes them. It says, but the prophet which shall presume to speak a word in my name which I have not commanded him to speak. This means they speak what God did not command them to speak. And at the end of the verse, it says, or that shall speak in the name of other gods, even that prophet shall die. So if they speak what God didn't command, or they speak for other gods, this describes false prophets. And you notice at the end of the verse, there's a death penalty there. Now that might seem really harsh, but we have to remember something. This is Old Testament Israel, and they are a theocracy. God is their king. And any king he sets up, any human king he sets up, has to follow God's absolute commands. And the absolute commands means having no other God but God. So if a prophet would speak and God didn't command it, or he's speaking for other gods, that is a very serious offense, and it deserved the death penalty. But now we go to verse 21, and we talk about how do we know they speak for God? Because it says, and if thou say in thine heart, how shall we know the word which the Lord hath not spoken? So we know from this verse that they are going to speak for God. But what determines that they did? How are we to know that? And that's what Israel was asking. How are we to know if that person is speaking for God or not? Well, verse 22 says, when this happens, and we're going to read it, when a prophet speaketh in the name of the Lord, if the thing not follow nor come to pass, that is the thing which the Lord hath not spoken, but the prophet hath spoken it presumptuously, thou shalt not be afraid of him. So here's the four things. One, they are going to speak for God. They're going to say that they're speaking in the name of the Lord. Two, if the thing that they spoke doesn't happen, if it doesn't come to pass, if their prophecy doesn't happen, then we know, three, they spoke from arrogance or pride. That's what presumptuously means. It means they're arrogant, they're prideful. It comes from them. It doesn't come from God. And then he says, at the end of this verse, don't be afraid of him. Don't be afraid of that false prophet. Don't be afraid of his position because he's not a real prophet. Don't be afraid of his word because it's not from God. You're not to heed it or be afraid of it. So when this happens, they are false. Dear Christian, we can read these Old Testament verses about false prophets and sometimes not connect it with our walk today. But 2 Peter chapter 2 says, just like there were false prophets in the Old Testament, there will be false teachers in the church today. It's the same dynamic. They're speaking falseness. And in Acts 20, 28 through 30, Paul said, this is what Paul said once he left Ephesus, that wolves would come in with heresies to lead people astray. Always check everything against the Word of God. That's what the Bereans did in Acts 17:11. You must check it, because today, in churches, all over social media, you have people in churches that are saying they're apostles, they're prophets, that they have a word from God. It's the same thing. They're false prophecies. They're unbiblical teachers. They show false signs and wonders. If you hear all this stuff and their word doesn't come to pass and their things aren't lining up with the word of God, they are false teachers, and they are just as bad as the false prophets in the Old Testament. And in addition, what happens if somebody gives a prophecy and it's true? Well, Deuteronomy 13, going back 5 chapters, verses 1 through 3 says, if a prophet in the Old Testament spoke the truth, but they tried to turn you away from other gods, then guess what? Even though they're telling you the truth, they're still a false prophet because they're doing it in the name of other gods. And God actually tests you to see if you're going to check it against the Word of God and to check it against His truth. So this is Deuteronomy 18, 20 through 22. Talks about false prophets. In the New Testament, we have tons of verses that talk about false teachers, and we need to study those so that we're not fooled. We have to understand that false prophecies and false teaching is very serious to God. It warranted the death penalty in the Old Testament, and that's how serious God takes it. As always, if the videos on this channel have encouraged your Christian walk, but you have not subscribed to my channel yet, and you want to, hit the button. If you want to leave any comments, please do so, but please do not be snarky. Please do not be profane. As Christians, we want to be Christ-like in everything we say and do. And until we do another quick look, check everything against the Word of God, dear Christian, because there are going to be false prophets, there's going to be false teachers, and they're going to say all kinds of things. God did not speak to them, and they're not getting it from the Word of God. You need to run from them as fast as you can. Thank you for listening, thank you for watching, and God bless.